Moroccan food in Gibraltar, a good drop in Wrexham, and orange chips. This week, we're exploring lesser visited cities in the UK with author Ben Aitken.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. Destination Eat Drink is for foodies who like to travel and travelers who love to eat. And this week, we're talking to Times best-selling author Ben Aitken. But first, take a moment, rate and review Destination Eat Drink on your podcast app. Just takes a minute, and it helps the show and helps other foodie travelers find us. And you can check out my foodie travel guide ebooks, all the best things to eat and drink and cool things to do in places like Lisbon, Portugal, Seville, Spain, Milan, Italy, and now my newest one in Bruges, Belgium. Download yours at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink, and thank you very much. Ben Aitken was born in Portsmouth, England, and is an award-winning and best-selling author. He's the kind of writer who tosses himself into his subject matter. He worked in a chip shop in Poland for a year for his book, A Chip Shop in Poznan, and The Marmalade Diaries tells the story of his unlikely friendship with an 85-year-old widow. His new book is called Shitty Breaks, a celebration of unsung cities. Ben travels to the UK's least visited cities, and rather than mocking them for being unfashionable, he celebrates the experiences and unique people he met along the way, which of course included amazing food. We talk about having Indian food in old British pubs, the Branston pickle, and much, much more. Plus, a little tangent about British classic rock. Okay, I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Ben Aitken, author of Shitty Breaks, a celebration of unsung cities. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink. I'm looking forward to talking to you about all these great places that you visited.
It's great to be here, Brent.
You know, I think Americans, I'm speaking for myself, are not familiar with what you're referencing when you call your book Shitty Breaks. It's only been within the last few years that I've learned the term city break. I don't think it's commonly used in American vernacular. So before we get into the book itself, you want to explain where you got the title from?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm referencing myself, to be honest. It's a bit of a fresh concept. What's the word? A neologism. Basically, a city break, as I'm sure you do know, is a weekend away in a different city. And that term, that concept has been established here in Europe for probably a good 15 years. It's quite a popular thing to head to somewhere like Edinburgh, London, nip across to Venice or Paris. Maybe because Europe is so compact, this idea of just going to a different city for a couple of nights is more practical and more viable. Maybe that's why the concept has got more sort of traction here. Anyway, as you can imagine, certain cities are more popular than others. I've mentioned Venice, Paris, Lisbon. You live in Portugal. Lisbon's a hotspot, Barcelona. And within Britain, you've got London, Edinburgh, Bath, Brighton, Oxford, Cambridge. These are the hotspots. And I decided to get hold of some data from tourism boards and look at the league table, which measures who's going where and for what reasons, and turned the league table upside down and started from there. So I went to the least popular cities for a weekend away, hoping that I would have a good time, because I just had a hunch that anywhere can be interesting. So that's sort of how it all came about. And the term shitty breaks, well, I fell in love with the wordplay, really. And really, these places aren't shitty. They're not substandard. They're not inferior. But a title needs to be a sort of starting point for an argument, because these places, rightly or wrongly, are unfashionable. They're not being as touristed as other places. And the title is just referencing that lack of popularity. It's not a statement of fact or even an opinion. It's just a sort of starting point, a notion that you're challenging in a book.
when I looked at these cities, some of them I thought, okay, I'm not even familiar with the name of that city. Or some of them I thought, okay, I can understand why maybe not a lot of people I've gone to some of these places, and I can see why it's not on the tourist trail. But one of them in particular stuck out to me, and I thought, really, this one is on the list of least touristed, and that's Gibraltar, which is, that little bit of Spain that kicks out into the Mediterranean that has been part of the UK for decades now. Were you surprised to see Gibraltar on this list?
Well done, because you've spotted the anomaly there. Gibraltar has its own sort of data going on and wasn't part of the league table. So statistically, it's not doing, it's doing better in terms of tourism than the other cities I went to. But the thing is with tourism in Gibraltar, it tends to be from cruise ships, and it tends to be from day trips coming across from Spain.
Okay.
What's not happening in Gibraltar is weekends away from British people. So, example, I didn't know anybody that had been to Gibraltar, not a single person. What's more, I hadn't heard of any of my friends or contemporaries even discuss the idea. At the same time, they were heading to Munich, they were heading to Berlin, they were heading to Vienna. Nobody was mentioning or mooting the possibility of going to Gibraltar. So for me, I included Gibraltar. A, I wanted a bit of sunshine. B, I was deeply curious. And I think it is actually an unlikely weekend away rather than, it's not. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. And a lot of Brits go to southern Portugal and southern Spain, which is, very close to Gibraltar, but they've decided not to visit Gibraltar. I guess maybe it doesn't have the same beach allure as those places do on the Iberian Peninsula.
No, absolutely. And Gibraltar was just a very curious prospect for me. No doubt it's not curious to the people that live there, of course. But it's a British city, really. It's also deeply Gibraltarian. It's got a distinct identity, but it's an overseas territory of Britain. It is officially a city. And so it sort of met other criteria that I was looking for in the book. And it's tiny. And it, as you say, it's close to Morocco. It's next to Spain. It's just around the corner from Portugal. And I just found all of those factors deeply appealing. And gave myself license to go and have a look at Gibraltar and include it in the book. And I'm glad I did, because it's a wonderful place. Have you been?
I haven't. I've been very close. I guess like a lot of the Brits, I've been very close to there. Spent quite a bit of time in Andalusia, but we didn't go to Gibraltar. And I think I'm going to have to put that on the list because we're not that far away right now. I could probably get there very, very easily. But as you were describing this, Ben, it occurred to me, and this is something that I hadn't thought of before. You said, oh, it's a British city, but it's on the Iberian Peninsula. We just got back from Malta. And Malta used to be a British protectorate up until 1964. And there's a lot of British influence that's still there. A lot of British people go there on vacation. But I think one of the most interesting remnants of Britain is they still have the red phone booths in Malta. And some of these, they're not phone booths anymore. No one uses payphones anymore. But one of the ways that they've repurposed them is for putting defibrillators in them for first aid. And I thought, man, they're holding on to some heritage here, but they've also repurposed this for something really good for people in case someone has a medical emergency. The defibrillator is right there.
I know it's great, but you still have to pay 40p a minute to use the defibrillator, right?
Does it have a little coin slot on it?
No, I hope not. Yeah, they're doing that. They're doing that in Gibraltar as well, and I was quite struck. I walked into the main square, and it's a very attractive city and state, Gibraltar. I walked into the main square, and it was bustling, and there was Moroccan street food, and there was a guy advertising paella. Get your paella over here. And there was fish and chips, and it was a nice, a nice melting pot, really, of influences and cultures. And there was this red telephone booth, and there was a queue for it. And I thought, crikey, why is everyone queuing to use the phone? What's happened to everyone's mobiles? Maybe the signal's down or whatever. But no, they were just queuing to have a selfie in it or a photo in it.
Right.
And isn't that interesting? You put something deeply familiar and banal into a different context, and suddenly it's an attraction. And that sort of points to something. One of the themes of the book is that the idea of value and worth is not fixed or absolute. It's flexible and contingent, and it's dependent on things like attitude and context. And that sort of gives me hope that the places I go to in this book, the ones that aren't as sort of attended to and appreciated and visited as others, will have their moment in the sun, because such things as value and worth and importance are fluid and transient qualities.
Do you have a memorable meal in Gibraltar that you particularly enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the Moroccan influence, so tagine is popular in Gibraltar, and I had a fantastic lamb tagine, and it was a lamb shank, and the waitress or the chef had presented the lamb shank surrounded by couscous and the lovely sauce to resemble the Rock of Gibraltar, and I found that was fantastic.
Oh, how creative. Cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. I ate very well. There was a mixture of fish and chips and paella and roast dinners and tapas and vino tinto and my favorite British ale, which is Old Speckled Hen. And what's a few people might be hearing this and thinking, oh, like British culture on the continent, that doesn't necessarily sit well with them, because I agree that sometimes Brits, when they go to Spain or go abroad, they're too quick to sort of want a version of home in a distant place. But with Gibraltar, Gibraltar's been British longer than it was ever Spanish. So it's not something it's not a pastiche or a performance, this Britishness in the Mediterranean, in Gibraltar. There's something organic and genuine about it, and it's perhaps easier to enjoy, therefore.
Yeah, it's not like going to the Algarve where it's, British pubs and things like that have been imported for all the folks. But yes, very much so. There's really good Moroccan food in Portugal as well, because there's a strong Moroccan influence, same from colonial times. And we just had a really good Moroccan restaurant that opened in our little city a couple of years ago. And it's quite good and quite popular. People love Moroccan food. How can you not? I mean, there's so much good stuff in Moroccan food.
Absolutely.
Before we go any further, I did want to talk to you about one thing, because I also love language, and as I was reading your book, Ben, I feel like I could hear your voice, because the way you write is so distinct, and the way that you put in sayings and slangs and stuff like that, it couldn't come from any other place other than from England or from Britain. And as I was reading it, I was like, oh, some of these terms, I felt like, okay, I figured it out immediately. Like raining old ladies and sticks. Okay, that's raining cats and dogs. Or turned on a sixpence. I was immediately like, okay, that's probably turned on a dime, the American equivalent to that. But some of them I didn't know. And I thought, I have to look these up. I got to use the Urban Dictionary to figure out what's going on with these. So I wanted to hit you with a couple of these, and you can tell me what they mean and if you have any other insight into these phrases. And the first one is called, which I thought was really unusual, is called "have a butcher's."
Yeah, having a butcher's, to have a butcher's. It's an abbreviation of to have a butcher's hook. Okay, so what's the butcher's hook? Well, that's, the hooks you go into a butcher shop. Those are the hooks for big joints of meat or a carcass or whatever. But why does that mean looking or considering or weighing up or scrutinizing? It's Cockney rhyming slang. So in the East End of London, for whatever reasons, the locals came up with these phrases that rhymed with the thing that they were actually referencing or meaning to say. And to have a butcher's look basically meant to have a look. So another example is apple and pears was used as stairs. And so there was this sort of rhyming code that the locals would use. And to have a butcher's is an element of that.
To have a look at something. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Welcome to Wrexham, and Wrexham is in your book.
Yeah.
This might be one of those places that might go off your list if you do another edition, because it's becoming much more popular. In fact, I was even looking at trying to figure out where I would fly into if we were to go see a Wrexham game. What effect have you seen to Wrexham from being at the bottom of the table, as you call it, to becoming more and more popular due to this TV show.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a real phenomenon. And once more, you've spotted an anomaly, because the data I received from the tourism boards referred to the period 2017-2019. That was the most up-to-date I could get hold of because of the pandemic. And in that period, this was pre-Robin Ryan taking over the football club. So Wrexham at that time, with Newport, was one of the least visited cities in Wales and in the UK. And I knew things had changed since then, but nonetheless, I wanted to go and have a look and think about what's happened in Wrexham and have a butcher's at the impact
right.
of these two American thespians arriving. And what did I see? What did I find? I found that a city, recently crowned city, actually used to be a town, but earned city status in 2022, in no small part because of what's happened with the football club. I found a city that was in a very good mood. It was enjoying this stroke of good fortune on the pitch and off it. The messaging around that club has changed, and that intrigued me. It showed me once more that the fate or condition of any place, indeed person as well, isn't fixed or absolute. You know, things can change, things can be tinkered with. And one of those things is the messaging, what we say about places, what we think about them. And that can change confidence, that can change visitor numbers, that can change levels of investment, that can change all sorts of things. And I think what's happened in Wrexham is wonderful for the city. I really enjoyed my time there. Went to a match. I think I spotted Rob in a bakery,
cool,
queuing up for a bun. It might have been somebody else pretending to be Rob. I enjoyed drinking Wrexham lager. I know we're going to get onto food and drink, but Wrexham lager is one of the first, if not the first lagers in Britain, was so-called Wrexham lager. And it's had a bit of a renaissance of late. Indeed, Rob and Ryan have now bought a share in the company. So that's enjoying another moment in the sun. And generally, I had a fantastic time. I just wish the model of sort of transformation was shareable and applicable to other cities, but it's not really. You can't expect Rob and Ryan to go around buying every struggling football club in the UK and thereby transform the fortune. So it's a bit of a one-off. It's like an act of God. It's like a divine intervention in Wrexham. And unfortunately, places like Coventry, Leicester, Sunderland, they can't really replicate that. The attention that's been delivered upon the city by the documentary is just startling. And it's great for the city. People are starting to visit from abroad, maybe less so from within Britain. But yeah, when I was in Wrexham, I bumped into a guy from Canada who'd just flown in that night because he wanted to see a game. And we had a few pints in the Horse and Jockey, and it was great to talk. And it's good for Wrexham.
How is the Wrexham lager? I've seen the signs, in the TV show, but I've never had one myself.
Yeah, it does the job. Yeah, 4 points and it does the job. No, it's a good drop. It's a good drop. It was a couple of German guys that were living in Manchester. This is late 19th century, I think. And they were fed up with the local beers, the local ales. And they thought, we want to make a beer that's like the beer back home in Germany, like a Pilsner. Mm-hmm. So that was their mission. And they decided that they'd head down to the North Wales to produce their Pilsner because the conditions there were better. The water was better. The storage facilities, the temperature was just so. And so that's where British lager was born, really. And it was born in Wales and in Wrexham. And it's tasty to this day.
Any other memorable food that you had in Wrexham?
In Wrexham, I had a nice bowl of something called lobscouse, which is...
Oh, I thought scouse was like Liverpool.
Yeah. I think they're relatives.
Okay.
So I had a bowl of lobscouse, and I did what you did there, and I saw the connection with scouse, which is a stew in Liverpool. And yeah, they're definitely in the same family because Wrexham's not far from Liverpool. So basically this was a really hearty lamb stew with potatoes and vegetables, and that was delicious. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Let's move to Wolverhampton.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the orange chips there.
Somebody said to me, "You've got to have a bag of orange chips while you're in Wolverhampton." And yeah, I gave them a look, and they said, "Head down to a chip shop called Major's and ask for a bag of chips. You don't even have to state orange chips because they come orange as standard." And I asked a few people what makes them orange, and they just tapped their nose or they gave me a wink. Nobody was prepared to reveal the secret about why or how these chips come out orange, but they are bright orange, and they've got an extra crunch, and they are delicious. Something about them elevates their sort of appeal and the experience of eating them. Maybe it's just a bit of a psychological gimmick or trick, but I loved eating my orange chips at Major's. And then I went across the road to the market and enjoyed a lovely apple pie at Bilston Market. And it's not at all bougie, the market at Bilston. It's not artisan in the sort of trendy sense. It's just proper people who know how to brilliantly do one thing. And in this case, it was apple pie. And I watched this baker making apple pie after apple pie, his own assembly line, and with the brilliance and dexterity of any sort of professional. And he didn't mind me staring at him doing his business, and rewarded me with an apple pie. And he said, "That's on the house, mate." And
that's nice.
A nice reward for curiosity. Yeah, I like stumbling upon sort of markets and places where there isn't that self-consciousness of them being attractive or trendy or on point. And that's one of the benefits of traveling in the wrong direction. You're going to places that aren't sort of aware of themselves as attractive. And as soon as a place or even a person is aware of themselves as attractive, their behavior is going to change somewhat. Mm-hmm. Remain attractive to leverage that attractiveness. And a lot of the cities I went to, they don't have that. And so there's a sort of genuine, organic, unaffected quality to them. And that was definitely true in Wolverhampton. Another great eating experience in Wolverhampton was at a desi pub. So a lot of the traditional British pubs have been closing through lack of demand, it being cheaper to buy alcohol in supermarkets and whatnot. Many still survive, of course, but it means that lots of lovely properties are left vacant and without purpose. And what's happened over the last 20 years or so is the Indian restaurant, which is another popular and well-loved institution in Britain, has merged with the British pub. And so you have these old British pub buildings that are now have a sort of Indian kitchen. So you go in and you have your pint of beer, watch the football, have a packet of crisps, some pork scratchings, but you can also order a curry and a biryani and whatnot. So it's a genuine, hybrid, a genuine fusion. It's lovely to see. And I went to a great one, great desi pub in Wolverhampton.
How cool would it be? I never considered that, but how cool would it be to go into one of these classic British pubs and watch the match and enjoy a nice big curry? That would be a fantastic experience.
Yeah, exactly. You're bringing two diamonds together there, and it's quite a powerful force. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Another, if you don't mind me going on, of course, eating experience I had in Wolverhampton that was really enjoyable was a cheese and pickle roll. So it's a humble thing. Some people call them rolls, some people call them buns, some call them balms. So basically a small bread roll, floury, white, soft, with some mature cheddar and some Branston pickle. And it was wrapped in cellophane. And they keep a wicker basket of said behind the bar. And they're £2 a pop. Now, this is something you only really see in Northern England or the Midlands up. I've not seen it in London or in Portsmouth, where I'm from. So the pub will keep a basket of rolls, cheese and pickle rolls, cheese and onion, cheese and ham. And there'd be £2 a go, which is like almost they're not making any money on these. That's a really good price. And it's just to give the drinkers something to snack on when they're having their bitter or their porter. And it's a custom that I really appreciate. And there's something about cheese and pickle that's delicious. Have you ever had cheese and pickle sandwich?
Not in Britain, but I love cheese and pickles going together because there's something about that creamy dairiness and that bite of the vinegar and the pickle that goes together so well.
Yeah, so I'm not talking about a pickle as in like the long green thing.
Oh.
British pickle. Yeah, British pickle. If you look it up when we're finished, it's Branston pickle. And so it's a sort of chutney, but it's got the qualities of the American pickle. It's got that sort of tart vinegariness, but it's its own thing. I'm actually not sure exactly what's in it, but coupled with cheddar cheese, it's delicious anyway.
Is it? I wonder if it's different vegetables, assorted vegetables. Because in Chicago, where I'm from, we have something called jardiniere, and you'll get little pickles and onions and cauliflower and all kinds of different stuff pickled together in a jar. And in a lot of restaurants, you'll see it right there on the table. You'll get your jardiniere as common as salsa in a Mexican restaurant.
Right. Okay. That sounds a bit more like piccalilli, which is something we've got here as well. Anyway. Yeah, we could get lost in condiments here.
Yeah. You talk about celebrities associated with football, and the only reason I've ever heard of Wolverhampton before is because I'm a Led Zeppelin fan, and I know Robert Plant is a big Wolves supporter. How exciting would it be to go to a game there and see Robert Plant up in the box somewhere if he happened to show?
Yeah, I'm sure you'd be excited. I wouldn't be able to identify him because I've never listened to a Led Zeppelin song. Knowingly, I think I need to get into that, don't I? But I am a big Slade fan. Are you familiar with Slade?
Oh, of course. Come on, feel the noise.
Yeah, exactly. And they're also from Wolverhampton, Warsaw, definitely that part of the country, and love their music. It's a far more eclectic and diverse than I think than I initially thought, actually. And I couldn't believe reading this stat about Slade. I think in the 70s, they sold as many records as anybody else. It was them and ABBA were leading the way throughout the 70s. And I thought that's amazing. And when I think about what Liverpool does with the Beatles in terms of sort of monetizing them and bringing them into the city and incorporating the band and their legacy into the city's sort of tourism offer, I think Wolverhampton's missing a trick and should maybe do a bit more with Slade. I'd love to know where Noddy Holder went to school and drank his beers and lived and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these cities do take advantage of that. You think of the Beatles, of course. We're about to go to a trip to Dublin, and I think they do a decent job. They used to do more with U2. I think, it's less so today, but you can see all the U2 sites. It's pretty easy to do. And some of these other cities, I think they do a nice job with it. We lived in Austin, and, Willie Nelson and Stevie Ray Vaughan are well celebrated there. But that would be cool. They need to put up a statue of Noddy up in Wolverhampton, maybe have a museum with a few artifacts there. That would be super cool. I think, Slade was much more popular in the UK and in Europe than they were in the US. Like, I grew up in that era, and you kind of had to dig a little bit. They were kind of lumped in with the glam rock, and they were not as well known as, say, people like David Bowie or T-Rex or, other glam artists like that.
Yeah, I remember watching a documentary about Slade, and it demonstrated that they struggled to conquer the States. So the data, the stat that I shared previously probably refers to British sales, doesn't it?
Sure.
Rather than global. Yeah. But yeah, love a bit of Slade.
Anywhere else you want to mention before we let you go here?
Well, if we move across the pond, across the Irish Sea to Ireland, I went to Limerick, which is sort of Midwest Ireland, and doesn't get much tourist traffic. Dublin, Galway, Cork, they tend to gobble up all the traffic. So Limerick is the least visited city in Ireland, and I had a brilliant time there. And of course, I had a fair few pints of Guinness.
Sure.
And in Ireland, they don't say, "Are you having a pint?" Indefinite article. They'll say, "Are you having the pint?" Definite article. And there's something in the way they introduce the thing that elevates it onto a sort of pedestal, onto a dais, gives it a sort of gravitas and a drama that you don't get with lager or other ales. There's something about Guinness that's quite special. So a nod to Guinness, and I believe that the Guinness I had in Limerick was the best you'll get in the world.
Oh.
They say it's better in Dublin, but I think there's something about the distance it has to travel to Limerick that does something to the Guinness, and I think it tastes best when you're propped up at a bar in Limerick and listening to some trad music. So a couple of old guys sat in a corner, one with a whistle, one with a guitar, and another guy was sort of reciting Samuel Beckett lines. And that was a special occasion. Of course, things taste different in different contexts. And if you're in a great mood, the macaroni cheese is going to taste good. If you're in a bad mood, the pint of Guinness is going to taste bad. But I have to mention that. And another thing I was introduced to in Ireland is something called the chicken fillet roll. Now, I didn't know what a big deal the chicken fillet roll was. I won't go into massive detail about it. I will say, if readers are interested to know more about the chicken fillet roll, seek out a guy called Blind Boy. He's got a podcast, so seek out a Blind Boy podcast, and he's got an episode all about the chicken fillet roll, and he basically offers a disquisition, a monologue about the chicken fillet roll and what its historical ingredients and elements, its genealogy. It goes on for about an hour, and it's a real piece of work. So yeah, that was Ireland. Other than that, Dunfermline in Scotland, least visited city in Scotland. I had a number of bottles of Iron Brew, which is the local soft drink, and I had a Dumphy pie, and I had a spicy haggis supper. So I could go on and on. You get the point. Traveling is often about food, and it's a real part of the adventure and the excitement. And I ate really well on my tour of unfashionable Britain.
Unfashionable Britain. I like that phrase. And you've added a bunch of places to my list, Ben, because, some of these places I've heard of and I've thought about, but a lot of these places I wasn't even aware of. And I always love these kind of off the beaten path places. We're meeting some friends in Dublin later this summer, and maybe we can make a side trip to Limerick because, all of this stuff sounds really, really cool.
It's only an hour and a half on the train from Dublin. It's got history. It's got beautiful Georgian architecture. There'll be great places to eat. There won't be 10 of them on every corner, but there will be great places to eat, great places to listen to music, and there won't be the crowds. You'll feel almost alone in being able to explore this city as a tourist. And as a result, I think people are more pleased to see you, more inviting, more welcoming, because over-tourism can really irk the locals a little bit, can't it? So when you're going against the grain, against the flow, that's another sort of premium to traveling in the wrong direction. You'll be doing it more or less on your own.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for writing this book, Shitty Breaks. We will have a link to get that book in the show notes. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, Ben. It's been really interesting and enlightening, and I've had a great time discussing these cities with you. Thanks for taking the time and being on the show.
No problem, Brent. Thanks very much.
Okay. There's Ben Aitken. What an interesting guy and an interesting life he's living. I'm glad he was here to share it. You can get Shitty Breaks wherever books are sold. And if you want more from my conversation with Ben, get over to my Substack. Ben tells me about dipping pizza in mustard, the curry capital of the UK, and a lot more British slang terms. Members of my Substack can hear that at destinationeatdrink.substack.com. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we are in Venice for the original spritz, a mixology renaissance, and gondola rides. Don't miss that. Until then, I've got tons of great foodie travel at destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a story about the best hot chocolate in the world. You can read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. There's also a new video out. It's about Portugal and why we chose Portugal as our new country to live. You can see that by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or by going to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@destinationeatdrink946. And don't forget, my foodie travel guides to cities in Portugal, Spain, and lots of other places are now available for download. I just published the foodie travel guide to the charming medieval city of Bruges, Belgium. You can download yours at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thank you, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson, and I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.